oh, this is because he's being sexist, he's being racist. That's not what is being said in here. Do a bit of background research into the culture and the reasons why, and it will become clear. Welcome to the Bible in 1 Year podcast, brought to you by two Brits and a Bible. If you like the idea of a casual yet meaningful chat about the Bible with a couple of mates listening, something could be good for you to hear today.
Today is day 149, covering Nehemiah 12 and 13. If you'd like a brief overview of these chapters, they are in the description.
Beauty. So I'm going to pull across a couple of things from yesterday, which has been a bit of a theme in Nehemiah. It turns out we have more to talk about than we realised. So here we go. Firstly, we chatted a few days before about people basically being forced to go and live in Jerusalem. And I was kind of like, why were they being forced? But you basically answered it by saying that it was because of the lack that was in there. But it was done in a way of drawing lots, effectively. So it was done so that, where am I actually looking? The rest of the people cast lots to bring 1 out of every 10 of them to live in Jerusalem. And then the people commended all who volunteered to live in there, like I volunteer as tribute kind of thing. But that's in 11, basically verses 1 and 2. And what I like about it is, again, the sort of the leadership quality, again, of Nehemiah here is showing the fairness in doing that. And it mentions it in the Africa Bible along those lines. Hopefully I'll find that a little bit quicker because I wasn't exactly ready for that one. Living in harmony. Fair inheritance. Yeah, basically it says about it in there, but I can't be asked to find what it said because we'll run out of time today. And then I love the fact that in 11:20 it references the families being able to settle on their own ancestral property. So again, the notes that were taken, the records, everything that was being kept wasn't for our good. That like tedious documentation that we see in the Bible that we don't really give a crap about was so relevant and so useful for the people at the time. So yeah, that's what I pulled across.
Totally cool. Very good point. And it just reminds me again, like we talked about before, how certain tribes have actually been converted because of that tedious documentation as well. So it's pretty cool. So my first one is going into Nehemiah 12, 31. So I had the leaders of Judah go up on top of the wall. I assigned 2 large choirs to give thanks. I just love that. Again, we've talked about that before in previous episodes, like the power of music, the power of choir, the power of worship generally. Don't underestimate it. This is a huge part of the way that the ancient Iron Age, Middle Earth Jews used to celebrate, you know, and worship and everything. So I really like that. Just tying that in a few verses later, it says the sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away, Nehemiah 12:43. And I just said, this is kind of a personal thing to some extent, I suppose. I love the idea of worship being more like a concert and loud and vibrant and everything. But I do also value the traditional kind of singing hymns and that sort of thing, which I know you, having been raised in the church, sort of shy away from a little bit in comparison now. But I wasn't raised in it. But anyway, the important thing is that people are singing, dancing, praying, enjoying God, however they feel works for them, and just developing that relationship.
Yeah. Well, I took out of that bit in 43 as well. The end of 43, it says the women and children also rejoice, which is such a little subtle bit on the end. But I know that a lot of religions don't allow women and children in the same areas as the men. I know that some Muslim mosques have that. I don't know whether that's still true today. I don't know whether that's across the board, but I know there is segregation between this is where the men go to worship, this is where the women and children go to worship. So it's this kind of inclusivity that is in there as part of that. Oh, could be another leadership quality, inclusivity. I'll throw it in there. Why not? Could be the final.
Nice.
Actually, no, not quite.
I love the way that you're just like adding more layers of complexity to your own editing, but I also am looking forward to seeing it. You're spot on. I've been to quite a few Islamic countries and they do still mostly worship in a segregated way, like in Turkey and Qatar and several others that I've been to. It's like that. So Nehemiah 13:2, they had not met the Israelites with food and water, but had hired Balaam to call a curse down on them. Our God, however, turned the curse into a blessing. I love that bit. It's just, you know, one of the major themes or ideas in the Bible, right, is God constantly taking our evil, our stupidity, our sin, and actually flipping it on its head and turning it into blessings and love and progress. and glory for him.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I had it in 13, moving on slightly, the fact that then when Nehemiah had gone back to the king where he was the cupbearer, he did that in the 32nd year of King Artaxerxes of Babylon. This was actually, I think it was 22 years or 12 years. I think it was 12 years after he left was when he returned. So he stayed, this thing got built in 52 days, like you were saying. But actually, it took him then 12 years to go through the rest of that to establish the identity within Jerusalem. But he was out there for a time. It doesn't specify how long. And then when he came back to Jerusalem, he heard about the evil thing that they'd done in actually allowing these people to be part of wherever it was. He got put in charge of the storerooms, I think it was. Right. Which he wasn't allowed to do, which is this whole not hiring people of the Moabites or wherever else it was, or Ammonites, because of the Balaam and the curses, things like that. And just the people had gone so backwards so quickly, despite the new covenant, which again is like, come on, guys, I thought it was different. But it just goes to show that we're all just absolutely wrong, don't we? Because it carried on to say that he learned the portions assigned to the Levites hadn't been given to them. Then in verse 15, the people were treading wine presses on the Sabbath, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it just unraveled so flipping quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why you've got to be ruthless with your own sin as best you can, like really try and cut it out as much as you can, and have an accountability group and fellowship and of course prayer, of course, that goes without saying. So then I put in about Tobiah as well. So Nehemiah 13:7 to 13:9. So this is part of Nehemiah being a badass, basically. And then I put in commas or quotes, brackets. Would we call it, because we like to give like little nicknames to our characters, not characters, our people in the Bible. So would we go with Nehi or Mimi or Nimi? I don't know. But anyway, he's just being a badass. But the other thing about the fact that he purifies the rooms that Tobiah had and puts in grain offerings and incense, don't be afraid to cut things out that are toxic for you and that take you away from God. So, when I became a Christian, one of the first things, not first things, but one of the first major things, I guess you'd say, wasn't actually joining a church. I was watching Adam's Movement Church at the time online. It was leaving Chicago, because the people in Chicago would have made it harder for me to really commit fully to the Christian lifestyle properly and actually get rid of some of the sin that I was dealing with at the time, which was sort of sexual sin and drinking too much alcohol, right? So don't be afraid to cut things out that are bad for you, basically, and replace them as well with godly things. So that's exactly what he does. He cuts out Tobiah and then he adds godly stuff, offerings, grain offerings, right? And, I think that you should be looking for that in your own lives and discerning what you need to change.
Yeah, that's banging, man. I love that. I think probably the final leadership quality that I'm going to throw in here is actually strength, and sort of being willing just to stand up for what you believe in and the strength in that. Because what we were just talking about there, and people violating the Sabbath, all this kind of stuff, it said then in verse 15, I warned them against selling food on that day. And then it goes on in 21, I warned them and said, why do you spend the night? If you do this again, I will lay hands on you. So it's like not standing up for people's BS, their crap, their excuses, and being strong enough to actually follow through on that. Like, you have to have enough of a backbone to, follow through on your action. So he's got the strength to actually then do that, including then with the whole foreign women and marrying foreign women, which suddenly I feel very bad about, because I married a foreign woman, like Canadian, and suddenly I'm like, oh no, I could end up saying things like sidewalk and calling it stalker and crap like that, and that's not a sin I want to fall into. So I need to be careful. And you live in Texas, mate, so you have to be careful as well not to marry a foreign woman. Claiming that's not what it means, but it was fun.
But anyway, yeah, absolutely, man. Very quickly, I just want to add in about that same thing. It's just Nehi being a badass. I decided Nehi, not Mimi. So just love that.
Yeah, for sure. Though, for what it's worth, just very briefly at the end, a lot of this bit in here can often be used for people that are actually wanting to try and bring sexism and segregation and racism into the Bible and be like, oh, this is because he's being sexist, he's being racist. That's not what is being said in here. Do a bit of background research into the culture and the reasons why, and it will become clear. But yeah, tomorrow's Bible readings are going to be Esther 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think 5 as well. So why don't you pick up your Bibles, get reading.
In the meantime, please consider joining us on social media at 2 Brits and a Bible and sharing this with someone to help spread the word of God.